Funding for Amish cooking from Quilt Country with Marcia Adams was provided by
Sauter Woodworking, America's furniture craftsman.
And by Marilat Industries, America's cabinet maker, committed to quality and a variety of kitchen and bath cabinetry styles.
Hello everyone, and welcome to Amish Cooking. Admittedly, the Amish have a sweet tooth and truly appreciate candy and cookies for snacking, just like we do. In the early years, the sugar needed for candy making and baking was kept in large barrels in their pantries. These Amish cooks also depended then and now on sorghum and maple syrup and molasses as a sweetener. And we're going to use molasses today in our very first recipe, which is oatmeal cinnamon Crispies. Now this is a very tasty little cookie, and it's hard to imagine that they're made of oatmeal, for they're quite unlike the traditional oatmeal cookies, which are soft and have raisins in them. Now, mind you, I think that's a very nice cookie, but I really do like this one just a little better. It also makes well over 100 cookies. And I want to add, you can't eat just one of these cookies. You will crave them by handfuls. Since this cookie recipe does make so many cookies, we're only going to do a half a recipe today. In your mixer bowl, cream 1 1/4 cups of butter. Imagine that. And 2 1/2 cups of sugar. And I like to do that for at least 3 minutes. And that's already been done for me. To that, we're going to add 3 tablespoons of molasses. And that gives it a nice twang, but you really can't taste the molasses. It just gives it a little undertone of richness. And 2 eggs and 1.5 teaspoons of vanilla. And blend that. Won't take long. Now we're going to add some spices. What I particularly like about this recipe is that you're only dirtying up 1 dish. To this, add 2 1/2 teaspoons of baking powder and 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda, that's your leavening, and 1 teaspoon of salt and 1.5 teaspoons of cinnamon. Blend that in quickly. When you remove the bowl, lessen the amount of speed, and that way you won't fit the batter all over the kitchen and yourself. Sometimes I have cookie batter on the walls. Now, to this, add 2 1/4 cup flour. I have cookie batters on the wall if I take this out when that's going too fast. 2 1/4 cups of flour, 2 1/3 cups of old-fashioned oatmeal. Don't use the instant oatmeal. And 1 cup of very finely ground pecans, and do that in your food processor. Return this to the mixer and at slow speeds, so again, this isn't up on the walls. Mix this thoroughly. One reason these cookies are so crisp is because the butter, which I really want you to use in this recipe, makes them so. Using butter as a shortening gives you a crisp cookie. Vegetable shortening yields a much softer cookie. And if you use the vegetable shortening in a rolled cookie recipe, you'll have to chill the dough for at least 5 hours because it's just too soft to roll out, and then you would have to add more flour, which will give you a dry cookie. Animal fats, like butter and lard, will harden up much quicker in the refrigerator. Now we're going to drop this by teaspoonfuls on either a greased cookie sheet or a parchment-lined sheet. It's quite an easy dough to work with, but I must tell you, when you're doing 100 cookies, it does get a little boring. So that's the time that I always choose to talk on the phone, like this, And then when I finish up, you can always tell what I've been cooking by looking at the dial, because I talk to a lot of people when I'm doing cookie recipes. Now, put them about that far apart. I'm not going to finish this tray up because, you can figure out how to do this. You're just as smart as I am, for heaven's sake. By the way, don't use diet or soft-style margarine products in any cookie doughs. They contain less fat and more air or water than regular margarine, and you simply will have a failure of a cookie. Bake this cookie for 5 to 9 minutes at 375 degrees, and you have this just terrific cookie when you're all finished up. Cinnamon adds a lot to it. It's a delightful, crisp, and absolutely irresistible cookie, and it's elegant enough to be served with a sherbet or ice cream at a very nice dinner party. Many of us have memories of our grandmother's cookies, and we remember how good they were. One of the favorite cookies in the Midwest is the big, white, soft sugar cookie. It's cake-like, but a bit flat, and studded with raisins. I know you remember them. I can't tell you how many times I retested this recipe so I could duplicate those cookies from my childhood. One of the secrets is using vegetable oil. But first of all, put a teaspoon of baking soda in a cup of buttermilk and whip it up, and then allow the chemical reaction to take place. In your mixer bowl, place 1 cup of vegetable oil, and I'm going to use corn oil because it gives the most tender cookie of all. And to that, add 1.5 cups of sugar and 2 eggs and 2 teaspoons of vanilla, and beat that nicely. You want it well blended. Sometimes you will find these cookies available in the summertime sold at roadside stands. And the women do this for their own little pocket money, and then the money that they get at the roadside stand sales will be used on quilting products, of course. Now, they might be selling not only these big white sugar cookies, but they'll have their angel food cakes and their noodles and hoopie pies, which I've made on another show. Now we're going to add 1.5 teaspoons of salt, 1.5 teaspoons of nutmeg, and 3 teaspoons of baking powder. That's your leavening. Whip that up quickly. And to this, we're going to add now unbleached flour. And I think the unbleached flour is very important. Before I add the flour, I want to put in this buttermilk. You can see how it has foamed up, and that is a very necessary chemical reaction that adds to the puffiness of the cookies. Then add 3 cups of unbleached flour. The unbleached flour is important because that is more like the flours that our grandmothers used. It has a higher moisture content. So add the unbleached flour, and then we're going to blend. My mouth is watering when I think of this. The Amish women still use wood-burning, heavy iron stoves in their kitchens. That's undoubtedly one of the reasons why the Amish are still able to make these cookies like our grandmothers made. There's something about that iron stove that does produce a better cookie. This is almost ready. Yes, indeed it is. But I am going to lower the speed a little as I raise the paddle, because if I don't, again, this batter is going to be all over my blouse and the ceiling, and we'll have a fine, jolly mess. Aha! This is going to be a very good dough. As we say in Indiana, we got a good dew on it. This is a very runny batter at this point because we have used that vegetable oil, and you would have to refrigerate this overnight before it would be usable. And we do have one here that has been refrigerated overnight, and it's certainly nice and firm and ready to be dropped. This particular sugar cookie doesn't have to be rolled out. We want to use a heaping tablespoon per cookie and only use only place 6 cookies on each sheet, because these are really going to flatten out and be nice and big and be a wonderful, substantial cookie. And There we are. If they're not perfectly round, that's all right. They will flatten out and be round. Mother Nature or somebody takes care of that for you. So sometimes the Amish women call these winter cookies because they really prefer to make them in the winter. But some people are braver than that and will make them in the summer as well. But affectionately, they're called winter cookies among the Amish. There's another cookie that the Amish make that is an oatmeal variety, not like the one we made earlier, and they call those bushel cookies. And they make these oatmeal cookies by the bushel for their church services. Can you imagine that? Now we're going to put on top granulated sugar, and be liberal because that's going to give them a glisten. I would say perhaps a half a teaspoon per cookie. You notice that I dropped these cookies onto an ungreased cookie sheet. Dark sheets like these conduct the heat differently than shiny sheets. Now I'm going to put on 2 or 3 raisins. You can be as liberal as you want. Sometimes people put little faces on them if they have children in the family. That depends entirely up to you. The cookies will have a very crisp brown edge if you bake them on a shiny sheet. And that's just exactly what you don't want, because above all, this is supposed to be a very pale cookie. It may be necessary to turn the cookie sheet around like this once in the oven so they'll brown evenly during the baking period. Now you want to bake this at 400 degrees for just 5 minutes. And watch it carefully. Oh, yes, these are going to be quite perfect. Allow the cookies to cool on this sheet for at least 3 minutes, and then remove them to a wire rack to finish cooling. The hot sheet will continue baking them. Oh, I can't wait. I simply can't wait. Food evokes such nostalgia. This cookie proves that you can go home again. They're absolutely wonderful. This is a perfect snack with a glass of milk. When I first ate chocolate coconut candy, I couldn't believe that I could make such a confection in a home kitchen. It very much resembles the coconut candy bars we used to buy as special treats to eat during the movies on Saturday afternoon. The candy keeps indefinitely in the refrigerator and freezes well, but ordinarily it disappears quite fast and you'll never have a chance to freeze any of it. Begin by melting 1 stick plus a half a stick of butter on the stove in a saucepan, and add 1 can of sweetened condensed milk. Do not use the evaporated milk. Use sweetened condensed. And whisk it so it's nicely mixed, and then add a teaspoon or 2 of vanilla. And pour this mixture over 5 2/3 cups of confectioner's sugar. It's going to make a big recipe, as you can see. Then we're going to add lots of more good things. We're going to put in a pound of flaked coconut and 2 cups here, or a pound, of very, very finely chopped pecans. And then mix this thoroughly with your electric mixer. And as you will be able to tell, this is going to be a very, very stiff batter indeed. And you certainly are going to want to spend some time mixing it. It might take 5 or 6 minutes to do so. And here's what it looks like when it's all done. A very nice, delicious, mouth-watering candy. Now transfer this thick batter into a 9 by 13 greased pan. Here, you have to use my hands to get that all out. There we are. This is going to be a fun job mixing. Now, you want to butter your hands a bit here. And this step is important. Pat this in very, very firmly, just like this. Coconut is really one of the most useful plants in the world. The nut itself grows on palm trees, as you could guess, and the cultivated trees may yield up to 75 nuts a year. Most commercially valuable part of the coconut is, of course, the white meat that we use today in this candy. And that is what it looks like before it goes into those nice bags. This is the white meat of the coconut, and it's called copra. And that's what it's called after it's been drying in the sun. The heart of the palm that is used in salads looks like this. But this is only taken from felled trees. It's a rather expensive salad when you get it in the restaurants. Here we have that all finished up. Again, you want to refrigerate this overnight. And when it's all done, you're going to have a delicious, irresistible patty that's good enough to eat almost without the chocolate, but the chocolate makes it superb. Now you turn that out and cut it in to 1-inch squares if you're in a hurry. And you can dip these 1-inch squares, or you can make them into patties, as I have done, little oval patties. I just think they're a little prettier, but mind you, it does take more time. And then combine in a double boiler top 1.5 pounds of chocolate bits and 3 ounces of paraffin. And you'll find this in the canning section of your grocery store. Paraffin is used in all dipping chocolate, and that's what makes the chocolate adhere to the filling. So let's just drop a couple of these in here, right in the chocolate, and cover them up. And I'm going to use this fork to pull them out. This is called a candy dipping fork, and you can find them at bakery shops. But if you don't have a dipping fork, you can use a toothpick. Come out here, you rascal, and get them out that way. Now, put these in the refrigerator to harden, and then you might want to take the scissors and trim off the excess chocolate. I'm asked about chocolate getting grainy on the cook when they are cooking with the melted chocolate. You should really, first of all, remember to store chocolate in a cool, dry place. Warmer temperatures will cause this chocolate to bloom and turn a bit gray. It doesn't affect the quality in baking, actually, but it isn't good for eating because it's ugly looking, to tell you the truth. And high heat in melting is chocolate's very worst enemy. It makes it dry and grainy, as I mentioned. And if it does go grainy on you, add 1 tablespoon of vegetable oil per pound of chocolate and stir until the chocolate becomes fluid again. A box of this wonderful candy truly makes a perfect Christmas gift. And it's nice also to make at Easter time because you can form it to resemble chocolate Easter eggs. However, the Amish do make this treat the year round. Popped corn is another treat, and sometimes it's made into Cracker Jack, which is prepared at home as a special but very inexpensive sweet, and it's also a favorite at auctions and country fairs. I especially like this next recipe because the caramel that's poured over the popcorn isn't as sticky and heavily flavored as most of them are. Because this recipe makes such a large amount of Cracker Jack, we're going to make only half of the recipe that's in the cookbook. Begin by popping the corn, and you need 3 quarts of popped corn, and put it in a large bowl. Don't salt it, and don't put any butter on it. Just have it all ready to go. The recipe for the syrup is very simple. You need 1 cup of brown sugar, and add to that 1/2 cup butter and 1/4 cup of corn syrup. That's going to add, you see, a little bit of stickiness, which you're going to need for a good caramel corn. Then add, 1/2 teaspoon of salt and 1/8 teaspoon of cream of tartar. Now, cook this over medium-high or medium heat in the beginning, and you want to bring the temperature to 260 degrees or hardball. I must tell you, when you are making candy, and if you do it very often at all, you are going to want a candy thermometer. It's very important, actually, to have a candy thermometer. You'll use it for a lot of things like sauces on flan, that sort of thing. But be sure the bulb on the candy thermometer, and this is called the bulb, is always immersed in the hot liquid, but is not on the bottom of the pan. It shouldn't touch the bottom of the pan at all because you'll get an inaccurate reading. You want to boil this candy mixture on a medium heat and just keep checking it so it doesn't hit 260 real quick, because if you boil it too quickly or too slowly, this is the problem you're going to have. You're either going to have too hard candy or too soft. So, since this is going to take a little while for the syrup mixture to reach 260 or hardball, this is a good time to show you a place that we visited outside of Shipshewana, Indiana, where popcorn is processed. Yoder's Popcorn, in the heart of Amish country, has been in business for over 50 years. From the beginning, the corn has been processed the old-fashioned way. Whole corn ears are ear harvested from mid-October through Thanksgiving. The corn is stored in cribs to dry naturally during the winter. The shelling takes place in the spring after the kernel has had time to harden and the moisture level in it has dropped. In the sheller building, the corn is removed from the cob in a cage sheller with the corn tumbling over a large blade and the ears almost shell themselves as they rub against one another. The kernels are blown underground into bins where they dry to exactly 14% moisture content. All of the corn goes through 5 different cleaning processes. The shaker table removes all of the unwanted particles and separates the kernels by weight. Any dark-colored kernels are rejected as they are blown through this machine. A large amount of their crop is sold to commercial establishments as well as to groceries. Their products can also be ordered by mail. The most popular item is the tiny tender popcorn, which is processed from only about 2% of the ear, so you know you're getting the very best. And popcorn is popping out all over. We eat about 52 quarts per person per year. Watching how much care goes into processing popcorn certainly gives me a new appreciation for the snack I've always taken for granted. Well, this is ready to go, and we're going to pour it over the popcorn. You have to work quick. Ooh, it smells so great. Now toss this just as fast as you can go. And I might add, you should immediately pour water, a little bit of soap suds in that pan, because it'll make it much, much easier to wash. You have a very caramelized pan if you don't. See how quickly I'm working here? There we go. Sometimes this is made into popcorn balls, and that's a nice treat too. Now, it's stirred up just enough and poured on a very large greased pan and patter out like this. It's too hot for me to touch, so I'm going to use my wooden paddle. There we are. Now, the next step is to put this in a 200-degree oven for 1 hour. And you want to stir it for 3 times during this period. And after that, let it cool. Oh, I can hardly wait to try this. Cracker Jack is one of those weekend traditions in Amish and Mennonite communities, especially when the young people get together for their Sunday night singings. Any leftover Cracker Jack should be stored in an airtight container. At home, I like to store it in this child's lunch bucket. Isn't this cute? Let's review what we did today. First of all, oatmeal cinnamon Crispies, an oatmeal cookie with elegance. Soft white sugar cookies, the epitome of American country baking. The wonderful chocolate coconut candy, a blissful experience. And lastly, Cracker Jack, a favorite of children of all ages everywhere. The quilt we have today is quite unlike any others that we've had during all these weeks. It's a 9-patch variation, and it's called a friendship quilt. It was made in 1955. As styles overlap and new patterns are invented, it becomes obvious that the quilters are usually tied to traditions that have been established in earlier periods. But some of them are also committed to establishing innovative designs and interpretations of their own, and we certainly see that in this quilt. Quilters have often been making quilts in celebration of events and milestones, such as this quilt a mother very lovingly made for her daughter's marriage. It's appropriate to show you this quilt, which was given as a gift when we also prepared food that is frequently given as a gift as well. So until next time, as a goot, eat good.
All recipes seen in this series are available in Marcia Adams' book, Cooking from Quilt Country. This hardcover contains nearly 200 Amish and Mennonite recipes with color photographs and descriptions of the food and folkways of America's heartland. The cost of the book is $24.95 plus handling. Please have your credit card ready when you call 1-800-325-2667. Series 2 of Amish Cooking from Quilt Country is available on home video for $59.95 plus shipping. All 13 programs in this second series are compiled on 3 VHS cassettes. Call 1-800-325-2667 for credit card orders.